Okay, it's 4:30, and I think as everybody knows, I called this special council meeting, and I am permitted to do so. First of all, bring the meeting to order. Can I move in a seconder? Austin Coughlin. At the special meeting of the Council of the Township of Springwater, June 13th, come to order at 4:30 p.m. All those in favor? Carried. And since obviously this is not a regular meeting, I need 3 different verbal motions. The first one is the addition of a closed session, item 4.1, just so we can have some clarity and some direction. So can I have a mover and a seconder for that? Okay. Do you have a question? Okay, seconder? Okay, we're adding an item for a closed session so we can be brought up to date with some information we received today by our CAO. You can't ask a question on something that's going to be enclosed. So all the question, the resolution is to add a closed session. That's all it is. Seconder, okay. Councillor Anna, did you move that? Sure. Okay. Second by Deputy Mayor Allen. All those in favor? Carried. We also have a request for an addition of a delegation regarding item 4.1 by the Midhurst Landowners Group. So can I have a mover and a seconder for that? Midhurst Landowners Group, yes. Mover and a seconder, Austin and Hannah. All those in favor? Carried. And the addition of a question period because of the format changing here. So we're going to have a mover and a seconder for that to be added to the agenda. Alan and Hannah. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, so that's going to be the agenda. We'll move it around and we may have some flexibility here. First of all, is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest on the matters? Okay, seeing none. What we will do is I'll do a question period, but at this point, probably want to focus on, because I'll probably open it up twice, because we're going to deal with the Midhurst Pavilion first, and I don't think it'll be a long agenda item, but who knows? That's why we have these meetings. Is there any questions on the kind of Midhurst Pavilion from the public? Okay, seeing none. I will come back to a later question period. This is going to be a little bit of a fluid meeting by the sounds of things. Okay, so to get the discussion of Midhurst Pavilion on the table, and of course we're talking about increasing the budget and awarding a contract to a different contractor, and we'll have a quick verbal report aside from the written report from Director Belcourt. So we're going to have a mover and a seconder to get this on the table. Anna Coughlin. And I'll just read what we're dealing with here. The report from the Director of Recreation, Parks and Properties regarding the Midhurst Pavilion dated June 13, 2018 be received. That the budget for the Midhurst Pavilion project be increased by $125,000 for a total project cost of $550,000, and that the contract to complete the construction of the pavilion be awarded to RKD Contracting Inc. and Suits Construction Limited. Floor is open. Would you like a quick verbal from Director Belcourt, or does the report say okay? Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Mayor French. Through you to Director Belcourt. So back in 2017, before tenders went out, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, you're saying we approved $425,000 for this project. Is that correct?
Director Belcourt.
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Austin. That is correct.
And the total cost now is going to be $550,000, so an extra $125,000 on top of it. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay.
Director Belcourt.
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Austin. That is correct.
All right, thank you. Just wanted to get it clear in my mind.
So do we still, Councillor Anna?
Thank you, Mayor. Just through the Director of Parks and Rec. And we had some conversation, but it was important to the public to know if we go forward with the contract with RKD, how soon could they start, the estimated time for the completion to take place, and a question that you may not want or not be able to answer, are we considering any legal action against the original contractor? Those were the questions that I've been asked, and I'm throwing them to you.
Director Belcourt.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will answer the first two. The contractor is ready to mobilize in 3 to 4 weeks to begin construction, with an estimated 6 to 8 weeks to complete the project, which should bring us, should be completed by mid to end of August.
Sarah Brindley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With respect to the third question of litigation, the answer is yes.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Allen.
Thank you, Mayor French. Are there any billed but unpaid charges with respect to the initial contractor?
Director Belcourt.
All invoicing that we've received from Consolidated Contracting have been paid. I believe there is one subcontractor who has not been paid by Consolidated Contracting.
Follow up.
And there have been no liens, or in your opinion, is there a potential of any liens with respect to that unpaid subcontractor?
Director Belcourt or CEO Brindley.
Thank you, Worship, to the Deputy Mayor. There are no liens against the facility at present, and speaking with the contractor, he will not be proceeding given the amount that's owed to him.
But will he be looking for payment of that unpaid amount from the township or from the contractor?
Director Belcourt.
Thank you, Your Worship, to the Deputy Mayor. It would be through the contractor.
Councillor Coghlan.
Thank you. Mayor, if I just throw you, RKD, have we worked with them before? Are they obviously more reputable than the previous one?
Director Belcourt.
Thank you, Your Worship, to the Councillor Coghlan. I have not worked with RKD before. The Township of Essa have used him to build their 2 pavilions, and he is a local contractor who resides in Ant Mills.
Okay, any other questions on this resolution? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. And I just do want to note for anybody that might be kind of trying to watch us streaming at home, we're having technical difficulties with the video part, but the audio part is being streamed to the best of our knowledge, just in case someone is trying to observe it at home. Just listen carefully. This would be the direction we would provide. Okay, so discussion item. Now, moving on to 4.1. Would we like to move into the closed session first, or probably, actually, I prefer to do the delegation because we may have to deal with that first. So I would invite the delegates forward from representing the Midhurst Landowners Group. Councillor Coghlan.
Thank you, Mayor French. Is it possible to have the question period available before closed as well, so that we have all the information?
Sure. We can move that around. Or make it, no, it's going to be very fluid. It's definitely, thank goodness we don't have a procedure bylaw and order of business, or we'd be in trouble. But we don't. So I invite the delegate to come forward and present and name, address. And we do have a timeline of 10 minutes, and I think that's going to be respected.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, or good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, and members of council. My name is Mark Flowers. I'm a lawyer with Davies Howe Partners, and I represent the Midhurst Landowners Group. I'm actually not going to make a deputation. I know a request was put forward, so just here to monitor today, but I am curious as to the rationale for a closed session to deal with this matter.
Well, very simply, we sought some professional information on some comments that were made at the our council meeting, and so we're dealing with that, and then come out and discuss it. That's why.
Is this like a matter of solicitor-client privilege then?
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, it is. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, okay. So with that in mind, since we're not having actually a delegation, we could go to a question period. If there is any questions, I'm not sure if there's going to be questions, because I was expecting questions may be in response to kind of whatever comments were going to be made. Well, I'll open up the question period following, after we have our discussion, and I guess, just trying to think, how can we do this? Because whatever the report is that Mr. Brindley's going to provide to us, it may pose some questions. Theo Brindley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would propose, I think, as you were about to do, is we have the question period now, because really the question period was being made available based on potentially the delegation providing some new topics or something to question. So it's, to be fair to all the audience, it should be at this time.
Okay, valid point. Okay, with that, I invite any questions. We might be able to answer for you from the audience.
I just have one quick question. I suppose something in common with the Midhurst Landowners Group, kind of interested into why there would be a closed session which was not advertised on the agenda.
Well, we do have a right through motions to add things to the agenda, which is what we've done properly, because again, there was no sense having this meeting unless we had the right answers. And it is in response to kind of comments and timelines that were made that were kind of left, in question. And being our very transparent council, we want to get answers for it. And so we did seek professional advice, and we need to share that because it is solicitor privileged, because there's a variety of issues that can come up in this whole big picture. So that's why we're doing it.
It just seemed somewhat contrary to the idea of transparency to have put out a public agenda and then have an item on the agenda that's not put in the public realm. Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate your comments.
Is this mic on? It is? I realized that I couldn't say anything from the cheap seats out there, and I would need to come forward. I would like to ask that there be a question period after you've heard the privileged advice or information you have to have, and after your discussion, so that people in the audience today have a frame of reference for their questions. At the moment, the session has just begun. And any questions I may have or others may have would arise, I think, from what transpires today.
Yeah, the only thing we are dealing with is really commenting on kind of basically our report when we kind of get clarity from a solicitor's perspective, is to kind of clarify, some statements that were made that were somewhat accusatory of the timelines that's been established, and that's all we're talking about, strictly talking about timelines.
I understand
and
that,
we're
but
not-
there's
and-
nothing to
and-
ask a question
No,
about at the
and
moment.
this council, this is a council meeting to deal with the business of the council.
I know
and
that.
it's not an open debate.
I don't consider question period an open debate. I don't think you do either. I'm merely making the point that the meeting has just begun. Nothing has occurred yet, except you're advising everybody here that at the last minute you found it necessary to put on a closed session because you've received some information that you need to hear in private. My comment is solely this: would it not make more sense from a public perspective, and in transparency, everybody's favorite buzzword, that you postpone the question period until after you guys talk.
You know very well, if you, even our regular council meetings, question periods at the beginning, and there's lots of questions about agenda items that are throughout.
I know that,
the-
but you've also explained, quote, "This is a fluid afternoon."
Right.
And there isn't any direct procedure
Well,
that you
I'll
must
turn- I'll-
follow.
I'll
So
turn-
I'm just trying to understand what the role of question period is today, which is something that's designed for the public, if the public doesn't have anything yet to inquire about, except the fact that you are meeting, and of course David's question was pertinent. So I'm at a loss here as to, I mean, either you're offering the opportunity for genuine public question or whatever, and I'm sure you are. Oh, thank you. He does wander. And if so, then wait till we have something to ask.
Councillor Austin?
Does
As I,
that-
through you, Mayor French, to Ms. Buxton, as I understood what Mayor French is saying.
I can't
number
hear
one,
you.
As I understood what Mayor French has been saying, we are not receiving new information that hasn't already been discussed in public. We are receiving comments on some of the questions. And secondly, directed to you, Mayor French, did you not a few minutes ago say that we could have question periods after the closed session?
As I said, we can do anything. If someone wants to table a motion to kind of suspend our question period now, because we have no questions except for one, we can do so. This is Councillor Austin.
Follow up. What I can't understand, Ms. Buxton, is once we go into closed session and receive comments from our solicitor and then come out of it, I just can't understand what kind of questions you could have then.
My understanding was this afternoon it says discussion about, so I understood that to mean that out in public, you're all going to talk about it.
Okay.
Alrighty?
And then
And that
you-
isn't happening now. That's happening after you've gone internally. You'll then be back to discuss it.
Right.
At which point, there may be a question from some member of the public relating to that discussion. And I have to take a tiny bit of umbrage at the idea that this is a delegation. No one's putting forward new information. But as you've offered a question period, let there be questions at an opportune time that is suitable for a clear question and a clear answer. This, to me, is not difficult.
No, but, with all due respect, the only reason I even opened up the opportunity of a question period is that there was a request made for a delegation which we did not receive, and that's why I opened it up a question period in case it was something that we'd never heard of before, and that was the reason for question period.
I just heard from Councillor Austin that this was not the setting for providing, quote, any new information.
Well,
And I
some
took
of-
that on board.
Well, no. Anyway, okay.
So I'm mightily confused. I'd be
Councillor
grateful if someone else made a comment.
I would make a motion that we have a question period after closed session, and I think that would be, I think we should be doing that.
Seconded, Councillor Cobb?
Thank you, Mayor French. And my request to have question period moved up was, I thought there was going to be a delegation and then an opportunity for residents to speak to that delegation
Right,
before we
right.
move to close. I have no problem supporting a question period after. And with the parameter of it's a 10-minute question period, it's not a debate.
Okay, so.
That's understood.
So you're seconding that? Okay. All those in favor? Okay.
So,
Opposed?
just to clarify for me, because I got a little lost here in the process, the question period will be immediately upon your return? When,
No,
from
it'll
our
be after,
perspective,
because we are going to get a verbal, so there is some public comment from our CAO to give us a broad kind of description of some of the comments with us wandering into the solicitor privilege area. And that is my understanding, is that CAO Vinley will be providing a public kind of summary of guidance on timelines and so forth, and then you can ask questions relative to.
that wasn't
those
mentioned.
comments.
I heard you, I'm just so confused.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, it is, we are trying to conduct the business. We did ask for an extra meeting to clarify things. There is an extra opportunity for you to comment.
Right.
And,
So the next
We'll
step
leave it
will
at
be
that.
for Mr. Brindley to give his overview,
right,
and then after that, you guys go into closed session to
No.
hear the.
the other way around.
Okay. You're going into closed session first, then you're going to come out, and Mr. Brindley is going to round out the picture to the extent that he can, and then you guys are going to discuss,
Yes?
and then there's question period. Did I get that wrong? Is that what you meant, Mr. Hannah?
What my suggestion is that we have question period after closed session, after Mr. Brindley
Yes.
has updated us. Then you have all the information. You may not have any questions at that time.
And that's very
If you
true.
do have questions that will be relative to what's been presented. That's my suggestion.
So that'll be
And
more
I
in the
would
form of
support that.
comment
So
rather than
the
question.
question period would be after Mr. Brindley presents, because that's going to be the information, and we may have further questions of it for clarification. But you can ask questions because it's going to deal with timelines. That's all we're dealing with today.
I know that.
Okay?
Okay, I think, no, we're not. We're not ultimately clear.
Councillor Austin.
Okay, through you, Mayor French, or just to you, Mayor French, please, not through you to Ms. Buxton. I just want to go on record as saying that Ms. Buxton made a statement about a comment that I made or a statement that I made was incorrect. I can't remember specifically what it was, but I just want to go on record. At the time, I was saying, no, I didn't. So I just want to go on record that you had said something incorrect about me. I don't want to get into a debate about it, though.
I don't know what I
Anyways,
said.
It's all on record. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I need a mover and a second to go into closed session. Hannah and Coughlin.
Okay.
In accordance with Section 239 of the Municipal Act 2001, the Corporation of Township of Springwater does hereby resolve to move into closed session 4:51 p.m. for discussion pertaining to advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communication necessary for that purpose. The topic is the Midhurst Class Environmental Study Report. All in favor? Carried. So we are now in closed session, so we need you to vacate the gallery.
No, I don't want, just give and receive it. Figured out over time who you were, but we never met.
On the side, on the very side. Yeah, that's perfect.
So you can plug in USB and use the laser pointer? Cool. After you have some other,
It's only the one glass.
No, no, we'll share it. Drop it, don't leave it.
As much as I want.
Okay, we're reconvened, and I'll ask CEO Brindley to kind of give us an overview, and then we'll have a question period, and then any other questions that might come from council, and then hopefully we'll come out of it with a resolution in public. So that's going to be the order of business going forward. So, CEO Brindley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll do my best to try to encapsulate what we have discussed this evening. A lot of today started with, out of great respect for the comments from Ms. Buxton with respect to her concern with respect to process and timing. And so, first of all, I started doing some research on that and sought legal advice to make sure that, once again, we're doing things right, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure the integrity of a process is correct. This has been a long process, almost 9 years in the making, just for the environmental assessment, as well as something that council of the day, and this council has chosen to be the stewards of. It's our process, it's not the developer's process. And as much as there has been concern, Mr. Mullen does work for us as part of this process, and all his peer review consultants as well. But I just wanted to first address the concerns provided by Ms. Buxton. And I'm referring to an email here, but it referred to timelines. There was two things that Ms. Buxton had concerns with. She had a reference to a part of the a part of the website which referred to the Environmental Assessment Act, first of all, and then some regulations. There was actually a table with respect to deadlines, Regulation 61698. And although I can appreciate all the work that went into this and actually the volume of what's called the Environmental Assessment Act, unfortunately the reference is to the general environmental assessment. Municipalities have a special process called the Municipal Environmental Assessment Act, which is different from the General Environmental Assessment Act, which is what's quoted here. So first of all, there's what's called the Municipal Environmental Assessment Act. So it's a very much of a, well, I say it's a similar process, but not the same aspects. So first of all, the quote here, the reference was not to the Municipal Environmental Assessment Act. Second of all, the actual reg that was provided, the timetables, if you actually looked at the timetable in the section of the Assessment Act, the timetable itself referred, well, first of all, to not the Municipal Assessment Act, but the General Assessment Act, but it referred to what the minister does once the ESR is approved. So what happens once the minister in that process gets the ESR, there's the 5-month comment period, then the 7-month, and then 6 months. So if you looked in the context, it's a nice table, but it doesn't refer to the Municipal Environmental Assessment Act. It actually refers to the other assessment process, but what happens when the minister gets custody of the report after it's done. So if you actually look at those sections, they refer to what happens when the minister gets possession and then goes through those comment periods. So unfortunately, I appreciate that. Other comments were the concern about the fact that when the timing are in terms of the submission of the final ESR, and our process, our lawyers have confirmed, has followed all the rules, and at the same term, who can actually call the study as being completed. And under the Municipal Environmental Assessment Act, The municipality has the authority to say that that process is complete. But yes, under the standard process, which you quoted, the minister does that. So I wanted to confer with council to ensure that we did our due diligence out of respect for you, Ms. Buxton, to ensure that we were following process and that it related to, in our case, the Municipal Environmental Assessment Act, not the General Assessment Act. And I'm told there's about 10 different class environmental assessment acts in this process, so it's a rather complex thing, which if I was searching the internet or something, I'd probably get lost too, to be honest, but I had the benefit at least of the resources to start looking at what kind of assessment act we have. So once again, we appreciate your comments, but I've assured council that our process is complete, our process is thorough, and we've followed all the requirements of the Municipal Environmental Assessment Act. Now, some of the other questions council had, and once again, based on some of the input we have from our residents, is they're concerned about the fact that we have a document that's several thousand pages, that and the review time to look through those several thousand pages. Also, council's concern, and forgive me about speaking for council, sir, but some of the discussion we had was also the fact that one of the things that this council has always talked about is processing things not during the summer, but trying to do that process more during the allowing time during the normal year, so it's not, people aren't away for vacations. But at the same time, talking to council about what I call sort of an envelope of time, and forgive me for that term, but that's the way I rationalize it, is that under the current process that right now that we have published, it looks at a 30-day commenting period, which is a minimum requirement of the Ministry of the Assessment Act. It's not a maximum, it's the minimum is 30 days. Then we looked at bringing back the technical committee or the steering committee in August, and then there's a to be determined, but we were sort of, as I mentioned at the last meeting with council, that was sort of seen more as in September, us sort of regrouping with council on that issue. Council is concerned about the 30-day period, which is, I stress, a minimum. So council has discussed with me about what's the implications and legal implications of extending the comment period for 90 days. So it would start June 19th and September 18th to allow a fulsome discussion. Now, during that period of time, a Part 2 order, what's called a bump up, can be applied for at any time. But at the same time, council wants sort of an absoluteness of process. So we discussed that after that 90-day period, then direction to staff to submit the document to the ministry once that's done. So that concept is to allow more fulsome discussion, more time to review the study, allow people to submit a Part 2 order if they need to. Also, it allows us, Mr. Mullen and myself, to answer questions. So if some people just have questions on the study, we can respond to those and hopefully address those concerns. But at the same time, we were concerned about, once again, honoring that sort of envelope of time, that right now, under the current schedule, it ends sort of mid-September. And under what would be proposed as a new schedule is it would still end mid-September, with the absoluteness that it would be submitted to the minister at that time. And maybe any questions first from council, and go on.
Maybe we should get some questions out from council in case, like, basically Robert somewhat repeated kind of the legal input we had, but is there any questions before I invite questions from the public, from council to Robert at this point? Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Mayor French. I just have a comment, not a question, if that's all right.
Sure.
Okay. The one point that I wanted to emphasize in the long speech that CAO Brindley gave was that we are planning to extend the commenting period to 90 days. During that time, anybody who wants to make a comment, it will be, our concern will be dealt with through Mr. Mullen. And if the person making the comment is not satisfied with that, the person can proceed to what's called the bump up order, in which case the concern goes directly to the Minister of the Environment and Climate Change. At the end of that 90-day period, there still may be things that the ministry has not dealt with and responded to the person who made the question regardless of that, we as council will be doing what, saying that it's complete. We'll be sending it in. Okay, I just wanted to make that part clear.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Councillor Anna?
Thank you, Mayor French. I just think it's important that our residents know, especially those that aren't here tonight, that the document, the ESR report, is available here in a hard copy if they want to come to the township and read it, because it's very detailed to try to read it online.
Definitely. Any other questions or? Okay. Questions from the audience. Please come forward. Name and address, please.
Good, I was just about to ask that. Kevin Newman, 3 Savoy Crescent, Midhurst. My question is just a quick ask to Councillor Hanna and or CAO Brinley. When you say a hard copy is available, is that the entire document, the entire ESA document? So I could go to the office now and say, I'd like a copy of this and take one home. I'm assuming it's in a banker's box, for lack of a better...
No, I think it has to be reviewed here, as typical documents that are available at the township have to be reviewed here, and we can give you definitely a little corner that you can visit as many times, and that's the normal kind of process for
Okay,
those
so
type of documents.
a follow-up clarification statement. It is available here. I cannot take it home. If I were to make notes on it, do I have to leave the notes here, or do I take the notes home?
Well, hopefully you're not making the notes on the booklet. I'm hoping you're...
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, you can take whatever notes you want home, but they shouldn't be written on the document you're going to read.
No, I wouldn't like them
Okay.
on a document.
Councillor Coghlan?
Thank you, Mayor French. Understanding that this is available online, why can't someone take it home if they want to review it at home? Why is it that a document has to stay on the property if the same information is available online?
I'll
in
let
their home?
CEO Brindley explain, but I think just the simple cost of creating the document, but Mr. Brindley?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, we're required to have 2 copies, I believe, available to the public. But the challenge is, it's the sheer size of it and the copying costs are such that very often in the past where we've had examples where we've lent them, they don't come back. And there might be another person who comes in 2 hours later who wants to see that document. So it is available online right now. It is available to everybody. They can download it to their computer and they can do it. But in terms of a physical paper copy, we will have copies here if people want to look at them.
So, and I promise this is my last. So ballpark figure is about 3,000 pages, I have heard. Is that accurate?
That's a nice round number. Yes, it's 2 volumes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
David Strawn, 47 Finlay Mill Road in Midhurst. Just like to thank the council for listening to us and apparently granting an extension for us to peruse this thing in more detail. Thank Mr. Brindley as well for making it clear. I'd just like to ask for it to be made a little bit more clear, for my benefit anyway, that the draft ESR got put in last year, and that's not a consideration anymore, because I believe the final ESR is now available online. And it was put online yesterday, I believe. I think that was the time. And can you just reiterate again when the 90-day period starts and when it ends?
The 9-day start, my understanding would start Tuesday, next Tuesday. Is that correct, Mr. Brindley?
Yeah, yes, Mr. Mayor, we determined that the 90 days now should start after the open house. So the open house is on Monday, and the clock starts ticking on Tuesday.
Okay. And the 90 days after that is to September 19th, is it then?
17, it's 90, it's September 18th.
September 18th,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, we will publish an updated schedule,
Yep.
of course, yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Assuming council supports that.
Oh, okay,
also.
we'll wait and see. Thank you.
Sandy Buxton, 3 Silverwood Crescent in Midhurst. I too am appreciative, however we got there, that there is now a 90-day period for the public to look at it, it being a huge document, and to think about the things that they may have issues with or just questions with, depending. And I think some people will have a single or a very highly specific question, and that's appropriate, as you say, to take it to the township engineer, et cetera. Other kinds of comments and issues may have to do with an entire study, in which case it needs to go forward to the minister because there's different information. So it isn't necessarily so that everybody during the 90 days will want to go through or feel that it's appropriate for what they're concerned about to go through the engineer first. And I don't think in any of the acts you're required to do that. That's an option, but you're not required to do that. So I hear it, it's up to the 18th, and at that time, if I've understood correctly, council will then decide, yea or nay, whether they're going to send it on, what they've got at the moment, the ESR, to the minister for them to review. The minister, of course, would also, I think I'm right here, and the minister then is also going to look at whatever bump ups have come in, if any, and then they render some kind of decision. Have I got that right?
All except for one part of it, to do the extension so we don't wander in kind of, pushing the thing onto another council. We are going to file, whatever the document's called, on September 19th.
Right.
Just, we're filing it. That's going to be part
Filing
of
is not the same as the
resolution.
minister saying yes.
Oh, no, the minister, I mean.
But that's the end, that is the end of the role of council.
Right, that's all I'm saying.
Right.
Okay, and as we know, I think you're very well aware, yes, we've been very involved in it, but at the end of the day, and we're talking earlier, but it all came out of Walkerton, there is not much confidence in municipal councils to make the right decisions and servicing, and so that's why the MOECC became the approval authority for these things, and yes, we've been gatekeepers all the way through and trying to do the best job possible. But so clarity, yes, we'll be submitting it. Now, the bump up orders, because we are, hopefully, extending it to 90 days. Obviously, a bump up, part 2 can be filed anytime.
In that 90 days, yes.
It can be filed at day 1, day 30.
Yeah, got
And
it.
I think everybody understands that.
Yeah.
And of course, yes, you're absolutely right. If it's a simple question, it makes more sense because the minister might, if you file a bump up, it might be rejected, and if it's a simple question.
Bump
so-
ups don't contain simple
Right,
questions.
no, I know, they're typically more, so I think you know the process of what the.
Okay, I just wanted to
true-
clarify
yeah,
that based on what
Okay.
I thought I heard
Sure.
Councillor Austin say.
Okay,
Okay. When that 18th comes, or the Wednesday after the final day, I don't know what the 18th is by day of the week. So that would then be a topic at that council meeting immediately following the final day of the 90 days, right? Where council will at that time decide whether to submit it, or that decision's being made now? I'm
That
just
did-
trying to understand.
No, that's why, for clarity, that decision's being made now.
What if during the 90 days, for whatever conceivable reasons here, some adjustments are decided by the engineering team, I'm calling them that, to make changes to the ESR as matters stand? Or am I hearing that what's online now is cold, that's it? It's there and it won't be altered over the 90 days?
Well, if something substantial comes up that nobody's thought of, that is not addressed, and I'm not sure what that would be.
No, I'm just understanding barriers here, boundaries.
I mean, we wouldn't control, like the ministry, I would be involved with that process. We wouldn't be. We're just saying, based on what we have, to extend that commenting period, the happy medium, so we don't push it obviously off to another council. That's not appropriate. We have to deal with it here. To keep that time frame and allow more commenting period. That's the mechanism, and as I said, we sought legal advice. How can, because we were definitely uncomfortable, or not all of us, there was an uncomfortable feeling with some that, you know, it has been lumbering along and then all of a sudden we have a 30-day. And that's what, quite honestly, that's the part that bothered some of us, you know.
Well, that was disturbing to the
Okay.
public, too.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I understand. So then, with whatever resolution or whatever's required to put this into effect, that in effect is your joint vote that you will submit this. Decision has been made to submit it, as opposed to other options that you might have. Is that, I just want to be sure I've understood.
No, and quite honestly, the options available to us to kind of do this in a proper fashion, and a responsible fashion, yes, I mean, we definitely had a lot of input on it, let's put it that way.
Right. Thinking that, and knowing about other jurisdictions, and I'm not saying council would or wouldn't do these things, I'm laying out parameters. So by saying that you will submit it, you're discarding the idea of saying, we'd like a few more studies, or we don't accept it. You're just going forward with an acceptance of the ESR at this point, if I heard correctly.
That is correct.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you. That's clear.
Any
Clarity
other
is
final
all we want.
questions from council to CEO Brindley before we table a resolution? Okay, so I have a resolution, and I know Councillor Hannah wants to move it. Do I have a seconder? And Deputy Mayor Allen, and I'll read it to you. I think it's fairly clear. That the Council of the Township of Springwater have reviewed the timelines associated with Midhurst Class Environmental Study Report, and that in reviewing the completed environmental study report, note that the document is significantly large, therefore requiring additional review time. And the Council is concerned that a majority of the commenting period is currently scheduled for the summer months. Now therefore be it resolved that the Council directs staff to extend the commenting period for the environmental study report from 30 days to 90 days, with the notice of completion to be amended to recognize this change, and further that following the 90-day review period, that the environmental study report be finalized and the appropriate documentation be submitted to the Ministry of Environmental and Climate Change. All those in favor? Carried, unanimous. Thank you. And I need a mover and a seconder for the confirmatory bylaw. Austin and Coughlin. That bylaw 2018-043 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of council at the special meeting held on June 13, 2018, listed here, and be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? Carried. And our adjournment. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Hannah and Coughlin. That the special meeting of the Township of Springwater does now adjourn at 6:02 p.m. to meet again in regular meeting on June 20th, 2018 at 6:30 p.m. Council Chambers Administrative Center, Minising. All those in favor? Carried. And I thank the audience, and I thank anyone that may be listening in at home. And thank you for kind of the questions.